Hey everyone, good morning. You're live with Bubba Da Vinci. I don't know how live I am. um, I was feeling a little under the weather yesterday, and well, Sunday. Yesterday, tried to feel a little bit better, but unfortunately, it's seeming to get the best of me. Hopefully, my voice holds out for this show and for my meetings today. Feeling a little bit run down. The I think combination of the uh, some weather changes between the places I've been and everything else is um, kind of affected me. But I think more than that, I think that the pressure of dealing with work and this house all at the same time, and and feeling the pressure of winter um, looming over me is wiping me out, and I don't think I'm being as effective as I could be. But like this morning, I'm always up at 4 a.m. Always up at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. Came, looked over, saw the time, said, okay, I should get up, and then convinced myself, no, I'm not going to get up now. I'll get up at 4:30. 4:30 rolls around. I can hear the dogs. They're like, "Yep, yeah, Dad, get up. We want to go outside. We want to go play." And normally at 4:30, I'm out walking them and letting them burn off some energy. And today it was like, "Nope, sorry, 5 o'clock." And somehow I managed to piddle around up until like 6:30, which is unheard of for me. Um, as far as locking myself down and not getting stuff done, because from the time I get up at 4 a.m. all the way till I hit this stream, there is a laundry list of activities and chores, catching up on my reading on emails, reading stuff that's going on in the world, obviously answering those emails if there's anything specific I have to answer, um, and then getting involved in directly being out and uh, just being outside in general and taking care of the animals. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest one to be if I'm being frank. Um, it's a big deal to make sure um, that I hit those things on a daily basis, because if I don't, um, you know, stuff happens. Yeah, just like things just start falling by the wayside, and there's barely enough time to catch up um, as is, and you know, uh, uh, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get on a roll about on bitching today. Yeah, there's absolutely no point in doing that. Point is, I'm my voice is going. Yeah, feeling a little under the weather. So if I feel a little low energy today, I apologize. That's definitely not my intent. When you guys are getting up with me, and I'm trying to, I like to be able to make sure I'm giving good content. I don't know if I'm doing that anyway, but but there you go. Um, so updates on the house. So I guess I do have some good news. So the engineer came at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and and did a walkthrough on the property, looked at everything, and the yeah, he was very hesitant at first to make a commitment that doing trying to fix the foundation and moving forward was a good idea. I asked why, if it was more of a like a risk as far as structurally, or what his validation why he was saying, because he didn't say nope, this thing should be demolished. It was more, if it were me, I'd probably go ahead and just demolish the house. And I'm like, okay, so it's not safe. And he's like, no, I'm not saying it's not safe. I'm just saying if it were me, this is what I would do. So finally, he finished his inspection, went through, and looked at the piers, looked at the steel plates that we put underneath, and looked at the size of the cracks. And, you know, I felt like we were kind of going through around the circle. And I said, okay, off the record, you know, not holding you to this as a state inspector, you know, because you're going to give me your report, blah, blah, blah. I go, why do you keep saying if it were you? And he's like, well, there's a solution to get this fixed. I can't guarantee what level of, you know, if you know, if it'll be a problem in the future, you know, because you can't predict this stuff. But yeah, there is a way to make this foundation a little more solid so you guys can continue to utilize this house. And I said, okay. So there's a couple things you can do. It's like, first we need to fill the voids. But what's up, Chris? Yeah, you have to fill the voids, and the ways that you can fill the voids, some are just, yeah, I'm trying to think through this, and I'm sorry, like I said, I slept horribly last night. When filling this and the size of those voids, I think I maybe showed you guys yesterday. I know I showed Yi, my partner, yesterday. But okay. So yeah, I have to find my other phone. So this is what we were dealing with originally. There's a drop there. This is after we lifted it. It was significantly worse before. And that's the foundation slipping on the backside. And so we were trying to get that was east and west, which, you know, basically when the house slipped, if you had one solid footing all the way around there, this corner things created a crack all the way through, both on the east side and the west side. So the goal was to, on the back side of the house, put these plates underneath with the jacks, and put pressure on them and bring it back up so that crack would be level. And then as they were doing it, the lift would be on the back, and it would theoretically seal that back up. And when they did that, it didn't go according to plan. And then it didn't only split the house, or the house was already split east to west. But now the way the pressure happened, the house cracked north to south and created a really large gap / tear in the front and the back of the house. Basically meaning that my house, I didn't have a solid footing / foundation all the way around the house. I now had 4 separate foundation footings, if that makes sense. Kind of like you poured one corner and it went so far, another corner, but none of them were connected because of these cracks, which is why we had to bring in an engineer, because we didn't know if it was safe doing that. Now, if they had done it, I shouldn't say if they'd done it correctly, because this isn't necessarily their fault, but if it had worked the way it was intended, what we would have been doing is they would have jacked it up, it would have stabilized it, held it there, it wouldn't have been able to drop anymore because those pillars go so far on the ground. And then we would have filled the remaining voids with like an insulating foam, expanding foam. You'd take the tip, push it as far in as you can, push it full of this insulating foam, which expands. It would have expanded down and out through the cracks. You would have cut it off, sanded it, painted over it. That would have waterproofed it and filled it, because the cracks would have been as closed as much as they possibly could have been, and they wouldn't be able to move because the pylons jacks were holding them up. Well, that's not what happened. So now I've got really large cracks inside there, and each fourth is not theoretically any longer connected to the one beside it on either side. And so the question became, is the steel good enough to act as a base? The answer was no. But we could go buy this concrete fusing material that they use on, major structures like the Empire State Building, things like that, that when, just over time or because of earthquakes or whatever, you get a structural crack that they can't just fill it, they have to bond it. It has to be a material that will create a physical solid bond between the two sides, like fusing it together. And we're not talking about just mixing mortar, so I said, so like mixing joint mortar and pushing the joint mortar, trying to get the joint mortar in the crack. And he's like, no, what deteriorated on your house was mortar. Mortar will hold stones and rock and brick together, but weather and everything over time gets porous. It gets in there. Water seeps inside the pores. It gets below freezing. Water expands. When water contracts, it flakes out over time. You basically have to remortar everything. No, you need a bonding agent that will act like that concrete, and it will get in the pores of the two and kind of hook them together. And I'm like, okay. So there was a solution. The steel plates are fine for the stabilizer, but now I have to buy this, I have to buy it and have someone come out and fill those cracks with this bonding agent so one side doesn't crumble without the other. It needs to stay as a unit. So that's the good news. Is there a way to save the house? Yes. The downside was that would be putting probably another $15,000 to $25,000 into the house after I've just put in all these jacks. We bought the steel, it's stabilized. This company would like to come back and push back the dirt. We theoretically have to do it by no later than tomorrow because we have a big a series of storms coming in, like 5 days worth of rain and storms. And if we have that giant hole in the ground, the water is going to get in there and get against the work that we've already done, causing potentially more damage. So we really need to get the area sprayed on the outside and dirt pushed back, even if we're just going to dig it back out again because we don't have time to get anybody out here to do this filling. So, sat down yesterday, late afternoon, talking with the family, and I'm of the mind that we just call it and move on to whatever the next thing is. Now, my youngest daughter's in nursing school, and she's been very, very stressed. While she's always done very well in school, your freshman year of college can always be, well, for both of my other daughters, it was very stressful as well. Although they're all type A personalities. They all want straight A's, like Jillian got straight A's. And when you get into college, it's completely different. It's less working directly to a syllabus, which you do in high school. I mean, you study to the test, and it was a lot easier for someone that was organized and A-type personality to get good grades there. And here, and especially in this nursing school, they're challenging you to think through things a lot more independently. And Jillian's struggling with this new type of education where she thinks that she's always looking for the right answer because a test should have a right or a wrong answer. It should not be subjective, and in her head. And so as your freshman year, you're not around your peers, you're in a new environment, you got a new way of learning, she goes to class and she expects the professors to be there. The professors have not been there all the time, so they're given all this independent study, and she's having a lot of anxiety. She'll get over it. She'll figure this out, and it'll all be fine. But as a newbie in this environment, and like I said, all three or the other two daughters had the exact same problem. By the sophomore year, they had their system dialed in, and they've been doing great ever since. But all three of them or the other two had meltdowns their freshman year, and Jillian's the same. It's like, I don't know if I can do this. I can give up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I look at it and I'm like, okay, the thought of having to deal with all this housing stuff and everything else and making her life even more unstable, it just makes sense to call it. Well, that's not the way she felt last night. Dad, meaning me, I don't do well. I have 3 daughters, and I was never meant to be a girl dad. I mean, I think I'm an okay girl dad, and the girls say I'm a good girl dad, but I don't deal with the emotional stuff very well. So the understanding in the household is I work, I make sure there's money in the bank account, there's a paycheck. If the girls need anything, I make sure they have it. I try to listen to when they have a problem and be a good dad. But when it comes to the deep emotional things, I let their mother handle it, because coming from the military and working in the work environment that I do, I'm unfortunately not the most. I was going to use the word compassionate, but that's not the right word. I think I am a compassionate person. I guess I'm just not. I don't commiserate at the level and the depth that they need when they need it. And so, I'm not the guy you run to or give me your big emotional breakdown, unless you're looking for it and go, you could do this, just pick yourself up from the bootstraps. Come on, adapt and overcome, blah, 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 and every other, thing I can think of to say that's motivational. I'm not the one to put my arm around them and say, it's okay. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to fail. It's okay to this. I come out with failure is not an option. So we balance each other out pretty well, because every time I go, if they need the hardcore stuff, suck it up, you got to get it done, and it works, then I'm the perfect guy. Sometimes I say that and they break down even more, and that's when they have to run to mom, and mom's like, yeah, your dad's a little hard like that, but he loves you, blah, 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 blah. And she can handle the emotional part. I know I'm not portraying the emotion right now or exactly what I'm feeling, because like I said, I'm feeling run down and tired. And part of this was from yesterday. So Jillian had, my daughter had an additional breakdown saying, if it can be fixed, I want it. Unlike the other 2 girls who remember Texas, my youngest only remembers Iowa. We moved here when she was probably 2. So she was born in Texas, lived her first 2 years in Texas, but every school experience, every life experience that she can physically remember is all here in Iowa with her family, the extended family, all her 26 cousins and everything else. And this house plays a major portion of it, which is why when she graduates nursing school, her first thought is she wants to work at the same hospital that her mom and all her aunts and everybody else works at, because most of my family either is in law enforcement, the school system, or hospitals here. And that's her goal. Where the older 2 girls had a lot of memories in Texas, the oldest one having the most, and when she graduated, the first thing she wanted to do is go back to Texas, live in the house in Texas, and go to school in Texas, which she has. My middle daughter, was dying to get out of here, but she didn't go back to Texas. She loves Texas and she remembers Texas, but she remembers moving around, and so she wants she has the travel bug. Jillian, the last of the girls, only remembers Iowa, only remembers this property. So for her, it was a big emotional thing, me saying, I think it's time to just call it, give up, move on. And I think it was a couple different things. I mean, most of the girls' lives, I traveled 9 months out of the year. I don't know if we ever covered this, but I mean, I was gone a lot of the time. Um, and so it wasn't until I retired my second time that I actually started spending a lot of time at home with the girls. My oldest was already out of the house. My middle one had a hard time dealing with having dad home all the time and setting rules, but the youngest needed it. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why I retired was, you know, family and my wife, looked at me and said, she needs her dad around right now. She's having problems and she needs you around. So I said, okay, going to retire, going to do this. And her whole life turned back around. I mean, I was so glad that I did it because she was struggling in school. She was struggling with attitude. She was depressed, everything else. And she needed me here, and me being here made a difference. But anytime I had to leave for a long business trip, it was always a question in her mind, are you coming back? Is it 2 weeks and then you're back and you're going to keep helping me and be here for me? Or was it 2 weeks and then you were going to be gone 4 weeks and then you're going to be gone 2 months, which was my old MO. And frankly, that's what we needed in the company back then. It was like we always had events going on. There was always something going on that I had to be in a different country where, we were building, we were doing things. It was just constant travel. And so I think that was part of it last night too, which was, I thought about it after she went to bed. She started crying, saying, I don't want to lose this house. If we can save it, we can, I want to, whatever I need to do, Dad. And, I kind of feel like the house, me giving up on the house was like me potentially giving up on her or the relationship. And it broke my heart to see her get that emotional. And again, she's having problems in school. Again, not bad problems. I mean, she's getting B's and C's. But to her, a B is bad, a C is abysmal. And it's like really, really messing with her. And she's just feeling like she's not getting it. She's not understanding. And more than this, I'm going to take a big step back. And most people don't know this. So you guys are, family knows it and everything else. My youngest has, when she was in second grade, we discovered she had dyslexia. She was dyslexic. And again, I think I told you, our population is under 800. Our school is so small. When we moved up here, they didn't even have computers or computer programs. I mean, I personally donated their computer lab. They didn't have a foreign language. We paid for Rosetta Stone in 4 or 5 different languages and donated to the school. A lot of the stuff they have in the school, I donated, or my family donated, because we have so many nephews and nieces and we wanted them to get a good education. And if the school didn't have the money, we felt it was a moral imperative to give them those tools, including there was 1 or 2 years that we paid for an extra teacher to come in that wasn't in the budget. And so the girls have always done well because whatever tools they need, including if there's not a class at the high school to cover them, all 3 of my girls, we paid for them to go to the junior college to get those classes so they were not missing anything. So they all actually had college credits before they graduated high school because the school was missing so many classes. But, the idea was, with Jillian being dyslexic, there wasn't an educator that would deal with that there. So we actually had to find a tutoring service or a service that worked with dyslexic kids and taught them the tools so they could succeed. But it was 2 hours away. So we had to make arrangements with the school that 3 times a week, my daughter would get out a little bit early, and like an hour early. And we would drive her all the way to these 2-hour classes in Des Moines and then drive her back, and so she could be back in time for sports. And we did that for 2 years. until she basically graduated from that program. And ever since then, she hasn't had to look back. The tools that she had and learned and everything else enabled her to excel in school and do very well. Well, those tools aren't working as well in college. And that's another stress that she's having. The reading is significantly more. Yeah, and it's like not only more reading, but it's more reading and more comprehension faster. And the tools that she learned for grade school through high school were geared towards the school's curriculum and how they did things, so she could make sure she stayed up and maybe even get a little bit ahead. So, the question was that as a young adult, is it time for her to go back and get some additional help to cope with what's going on in this new environment? Is it she just needs encouragement from us and needs to kind of work through this, because the stress of thinking through these things is actually making it worse than it is? She's used to being a top student, and now she's around a lot of top students, and you grade on a curve, and so she's not performing as well as she likes, so that's a lot of pressure on her, and she's putting that on herself. And then last is this home situation. So part of my trying to figure out last night was, okay, money or trying to once again create a safe environment that will help stabilize her life. Because sometimes stabilizing, like this house, stabilizing one element can help you deal with the rest of the problems. Sometimes juggling too many of them are part of it. Is there a tutor she can work with at college to help her? So yes and no. So before she even told us the issues that she was having, she went and signed up for a tutoring mentoring program at the college. They do have them available. I didn't realize nursing school has like a 30% drop off rate. 30% don't make it through the first round of classes. And I found out they also talking to some people at the school, when I went in with her to talk to the counselors and things like that, which I didn't interject myself, she asked me to go, was the first year, the classes are actually that's by design, because nursing is a high pressure environment, and they want to weed out the people who don't do well in that high pressure environment. And then after that first year, they say classes get significantly easier, blah, 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 blah. And in her class, I thought it was odd. About 50% of the class is my daughter's age. The other 50% of the class are people like in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, and she even has two in their 50s who they went and already did they got the certificate that my daughter already has. And my daughter could go work at a hospital right now. And apparently what a lot of people do, because of the rigorous scheduling of the classes, they go and do this first, I'm going to call it a CNA. I'm not sure if that's accurate. But whatever that first certificate is, and then a lot of them go to work at the hospital and get the hands-on experience, which makes taking the classes easier, because you've already learned the pressure and you learn how to do the inductions and you learn all this stuff there. And so everything is a lot more familiar to you. And you still have to do the reading. It's not like you're trying to learn it all as you're reading it and retain it at the same level that someone who is coming straight out of high school and gotten into nursing school that has zero experience. And so that's another thing that freaks her out, that so many, that she's one of the other side, the kids that are coming in from high school, that when a topic is being talked about by the professor, 50% of the class is nodding and they already get it. And she said, I already feel like I'm behind. And then on top of and then I have to read all this stuff and try to comprehend it and get to their level. And, so I'm at the same level as the rest of the class for the testing and things like that. And I feel like I'm just not there, Dad. I'm not keeping up. and it's frustrating for her and depressing. So the tutoring, while she's been doing it and it's been helping her a little, and her test grades have been improving. The tutoring is designed to help you for the tests, not help you with the comprehension on the overall topics. And they don't have anything there, just a general, okay, let's start at the beginning of the book, like math. And okay, you don't understand your addition, subtraction, multiplication, so let's just go through the whole thing. It's more like you're solving the problems, again, kind of working towards the test. And the bigger thing is we have to figure out a way that she can get the comprehension done at this faster pace. And the school has nothing, no program for kids. I'm going to say kids of special needs, although my daughter would kill me if I called her a special needs child. That deals with dyslexia. And so many people have it. And the key to dyslexia is learning these tricks. And so anyway, I think that kind of brought my spirits, and my energy down, and also allowed me to get sicker faster, because I'm just like, what can I do for her? I know a couple of parents said, look, she has to figure out on her own. She's an adult now. And I'm like, I'm of the mind of, yes, people have to figure things out on their own, but sometimes you just need to be there to offer support. Number one. And number two is, I don't believe the current generation, my daughter's generation, all her friends, people 18 years and younger, are being taught those skills. Problem solving is not in the school formats anymore. I mean, nowadays, wood shop and things like that, they're all drafting everything on computers and using CNC machines. They're using tools that do all the work for them. You're not having to figure out the math and cut your angles and, oh, that didn't work, I need to correct it. Problem solving is not part of this. They're being taught, if you fail the test, just keep studying the same information until you pass it. Don't worry about whether you understand it. Just keep doing it until you pass it. Or don't worry about this. No one's going to check you on this anyway. It's hardly ever used anymore, so don't even learn the foundational work. And so I do believe it's I feel like I would be doing, wifey. I mean, I have all my nephews and a couple of nieces that took shop here in school, and my daughters took mechanic shop but didn't take this. All their stuff looked perfect, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys all did such a great job. And when they come to my place, they can't use a hammer, they can't use a saw, they can't use all this general tooling. And I'm like, how did you build all this stuff? And you don't. Well, you get on the computer, and then you pick the plan that you want, and you design it, and then everything is tied to the computer now. It's like their table saws. It's called computer generated. So it'll pick the angle and you run the wood through. And then they all have pneumatic machines. So they're not nailing anything. They're using nail guns or staple guns to hold everything together. And it's glued, and it's this and it's that. And I'm like, so you really didn't learn anything. I mean, it's like a paint by numbers kit. How is the problem solving? If you haven't learned to measure twice and cut once, how do you know that that's a thing? Right? Well, shit. Most of these kids can't even grab a tape measure and look at a tape measure and give you an actual measurement. It's like, okay, can you mark that board at 4 foot 3/6, and 3 3/16? And they're like, huh? It's like those little lines, there's eighths, there's 16ths, and they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, oh my God, didn't you take shop? Yeah. Did you pass shop? Yeah. It's like, okay. So I feel like, well, I could let my daughter go out there and struggle. I'm a problem solver. That's what I do for a living. And, I grew up with, that was my job, right? It's like, as a student, as a kid, a son or a grandson or whatever, you go out there and they say, oh, go do this. And it's like, well, how do I do this? Well, go figure it out. You're smart. And you would just go figure things out. And If you came up with a different way than they did, they go, well, here's a way that we do it. It might be a little easier and you can make your decisions, but that's problem solving, right? It's constantly evolving things to make it easier and done. But now we tell these kids it's okay to walk away. If something doesn't work, it's, here's your participation award. Go try something else. Go do something else. And so they don't have any intestinal fortitude or the ability to actually work through these things. They throw a temper tantrum and they go. Now, Jillian's not throwing a temper tantrum, but I feel like she's crying out for help, and it's my duty as her dad, or even just as a human being, to reach out and say, okay, I'm not going to give you the answers, but I'll help walk you through this so you can find where you can get the answers and then make your decisions yourself. So going to the school, I went with her so she had someone comforting, and I said, okay, Jillian, tell her what your problems are. She did, articulated them fairly well. I threw in a couple of extra things. They told her what the tools are they could offer. She made the decision to go ahead and get some tutoring, but she looked at, the counselor and me and said, but I don't think that's going to get me across the finish line. Here's what the other problem is. You're right. That's true. There is no failing. You just redo it again. You just pay more money, pay another dollar in. But by the way, good morning, Yi. So anyway, like I said, the end of this kind of being the fact that, I was trying to make a decision last night initially based on what was best for me financially and mentally, because I just want to be done with this, and also for the family. And then bringing Jillian into the mix and kind of saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I think we should just walk away from this, and just seeing the complete breakdown and, both mentally and emotionally. And I was like, I didn't think you cared that much about the house. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And she's like, I want the house. But I think it was really the whole umbrella. It was, I think in her head, giving up on the house is just another thing that we can just give up on and walk away from. And I think it was just too much for her. So in a couple of hours, I'm meeting with the company that could come out and potentially put that concrete binder inside there. I'll get a price on getting it done. The price they quoted over the phone yesterday, like I said, was, I think the actual quote was like 19.5 through up to 30,000, depending on the size of the cracks and how much filler into their sub. Am I only filling the big ones, like the 4 big ones, or if there's also little ones that are already starting, do we want to get them all done and just make sure everything is completed? And so I think it's basically like $7,500 per section, to have them come out there, fill it, scrape it, make sure it's all finished and everything else. And then you get a 25-year guarantee on the fusing and a 25-year guarantee on the pillars. So theoretically, I'll be dead when the next time anything happens with this house. Jillian will be, in her 40s, and she can figure it out from there. But I just running the numbers through my head, and it's like, so I have that struggle I have to get through today. So that was yesterday, and that's where the house is. So like I said, the good news is, can it be fixed? Yes. Bad news is it's at a cost. And I don't know if I'm trying to balance whether that cost makes sense, even if it doesn't make sense, if I should just do it. And then work. We had my meeting yesterday, and I had a bunch of meeting with vendors. And I'm going to kind of, I always try to cover some news, and, I'm going to throw this in here, but I told you, meeting a lot of these vendors, all of them are saying the same thing. It's like sales are down, this is down, that's down. So the other day, you can't see it. So when Billy and I were going to Jay, Oklahoma, we stopped in Missouri for lunch, and we went into a GameStop because it was right next to where we were going to eat, and found a new coffee mug, which was fun. But this was in a clearance pile. And Billy was like, "Oh my God, look at this clearance table. You have to do this." And the first thing I looked at and I noticed, I was like, and now I have a lot of history with GameStop. He knows this. I mean, our original company, CPL, back in the day when I first took over and was working with that, GameStop offered to buy our company for way too much money. And the CEO at that time, Angel Munoz, told them to go pound dirt. It was the stupidest mistake he ever made, because it would have been a great, great deal for both GameStop and our company. When they didn't get the chance to buy us, they tried to develop several of their own programs, all of which failed. Because if you're a retail, you should handle retail. If you're in operations in a tournament or event group, you should handle that. The two should never, try to do each other's jobs. That's why most events that are put on by retailers or big companies are hired out. But back then, this was not something you could really hire out. It was something that they needed to buy, couldn't find a buy, so they tried to do it on their own, failed, wasted a lot of money. But multiple times over the years, I know several VPs and executives over there. I used to know the CEO fairly well. He's retired now, and they got a new one. And the ideas that they've come up with over time to try to keep themselves afloat have not really done well. Now, you guys all know that a year ago or 2 years ago, they were part of a big stock escalation, where people kept investing in them, shooting up their stock price to unbelievable levels. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but basically, you have marked buys. GameStop probably over the last 10 years has basically been a very profitable, almost banking system for a lot of investors. They have a lot of property, they have a lot of stores, they have a lot of inventory. They're able to play and adjust the numbers and things like that. And until, this got discovered and all these internet investors were able to play with that, it was a roller coaster, because what would happen was, as long as their numbers were staying there, anyway, I don't want to go through the mechanics of how it worked, but they kind of got screwed. But now they have a lot of exposure, and the GameStop is able to manipulate their numbers quite a bit. Now they posted a surprise. Okay, there's a couple things. GameStop for Q2 fell 31%. Their sales fell 30. Their net sales fell 31%, and their gross sales, I think it was 19. Maybe it was the other way. Anyway, 19. So I think it's the other way. And at first they were like, okay, we're going to go into Q3. They did a bunch of things where they could cut costs, which is this. But basically, they bought a bunch of product of things that were hot, basically collectibles, things like that. And then they slashed the prices, and they still make a profit, because when they first come out, like this cup, I already tore off the sticker. When it got released, when they bought this, probably in the peak of COVID or during that period of time, they were selling these cups at $25. I bought it off of the bargain table for $12. So it was more than 50% off. I think most of the things on the table were 60 to 80% off. Now, I went online and I Googled this model and found it. You can buy these really easy, because it's not, unfortunately, it's not official product out there. I mean, certified by Nintendo or Pokemon. And I found them on Alibaba, and they probably got purchased for about $2 a piece. So even though they took a major slice off of off of this price and on the sale, you know, let's even say landed, each one of these costs $3 or $4. You know, I'm buying it at 12. So, you know, they're still making a $7 profit off of something that is on the clearance table out there. So in Q3, they did a ton of this. And every time you walk into the store, it is filled with things all over that table. And I know Wifey goes there with her son, or one of her kids. So I'm sure you've seen it. It's like they keep bringing a new product, but then they mark it down significantly. A lot of people wait for the markdowns, and then they sell it, but they're still doing it at a profit. And so they see GameStop surprisingly still made a profit in Q3. So the first time I told you they made losses in Q2, but they're making they made a small profit, a surprise profit in Q3. But then GameStop made an announcement right after they posted those Q3 profits and stated that they're closing down up to 300 stores. They pretty much wiped out all the stores outside the United States, Mexico, Europe, everything else. I don't know if there's hardly any stores left outside the United States. I believe those are all closed. But United States, I shouldn't say United States, North America, so United States and Canada, you know, there's still quite a few stores. And they're talking about knocking off another 300 stores and rolling that inventory into more online sales and things like that. And so now that story wasn't only specifically about GameStop, you know, I did actually talk to a couple of people and my VP friend, and they're actually getting ready to release a whole new model for GameStop, which is actually kind of interesting, but I won't cover it today. But it kind of rolls into the same thing that we're dealing with our other vendors and everything else. Like they're predicting GameStop is closing these stores going into the Christmas season, predicting a massive downswing, like up to a 30 to 40% downswing in sales year over year going into the Christmas season, believing that people are just going to be holding their dollars very tightly because there's not a lot of money flowing right now, pre-election and bad economy. And so how they can play with those numbers is you cut 300 stores and you keep discounting things to the point where people go, I can afford that and I'll buy it, but you're still posting, let's say a 20%, a 15 or 20% profit over your purchase price, over your costs. And then you've decreased 300 stores. So you've reduced all that burn on a national scale. They will probably be looking amazing going into 2025 as far as a stock price and a company is concerned. Yeah. And I'm reading. So I had looked this up, and this last article on the New York Post, lists a whole bunch of companies they think are doing the same thing. Rite Aid, where they don't believe the sales are going to be strong. So in an effort to keep their share price strong, they're cutting all fat and doing store closures, which really doesn't mean you're profitable, but you're managing it from a different side. And that's going to give a false sense of hope on for some of these places that they're doing better and the economy's there, but it's not, right? I mean, these are things they should have done anyway, but you can't say how well your company is doing if you're losing 31% of your net sales, 31.4. I mean, down from 1.2 billion down to 798,000. And then cut a bunch of stores and saying, yeah, people still want this infrastructure in this store. No, it just means that all that extra dead weight you've been carrying, you've gotten rid of it. It doesn't actually tell you whether or not the market is changed and people are buying. So we're as a company yesterday on top of all this other stress, I'm looking at it and trying to make the best decision for my company, but also the partners that we're working with, which is, kind of, it's the same sort of thing. It's like, all right, well, GameStop's tricking everybody. Everybody goes in, like all these companies we work with, they develop their company. Most of them started right before COVID. We talked about this yesterday, or during COVID, or the unfortunate ones started just after, when everybody was paying top dollar for everything. COVID was making it harder and harder to find product and find materials. So a video card that was $200 before COVID became $800 during COVID, and then post COVID, no one, if you've got a whole bunch of them in, nobody wanted the video cards because they had already purchased the video card way too expensively, so they didn't want to buy another one, and so now you got inventory sitting on the shelves. And it's this leveling that has to come out. And I've got like 15 companies that we're working with that all have this problem. They're all either bought their materials at too high of a price, and so their product is overpriced in order for them to break even or make money. They're sitting on inventory that is now aged, and the market is oversaturated with everybody doing steep discounts and taking losses and everything else. And you have to buy the ads because the companies like Facebook haven't reduced their prices yet. It's this really big circle. And so, I've got 60 days to offer solutions to my partners. And they're looking at my company and my staff to help them find these answers. And I know that the solutions that I'm going to give are not going to be, they're not going to be happy with them. We talked about the magazine that we work with. I mean, I was surprised that I told you before I left, I said, I'm going to be delivering this bad news, and I'm not sure how receptive they're going to be. This is tough. And then we did a meeting on Zoom, and they came back and told me it was worse than I thought. And so let's get together and meet. Maybe that's what I'll find with all these vendors. They're just like, yeah, we have that realization. Let's move forward, and just get this done and survive this, and then come out on the other side stronger. Kind of the GameStop philosophy. Or I could be crushing a whole lot of dreams of these people who have invested their time and money and energy personally into this. And it could be like my daughter, which is, it's just like, I want to give up. I can't keep up. I can't keep my head above water. And so it's just easier to walk away. And I'm feeling the same on both fronts, which is, I'm looking at this and going, I know the smarter solution would just be walk away from the house and let it go, but that's not the best solution for my daughter. And 10 years down the line, she could be living in that house with her husband and kids and a great job in nursing, because I had the fortitude and the ability, whether it was a smart investment or not, to help keep the ship afloat just enough to weather the storm, come out the other end, and then everything goes better from there. While that might not be the best solution for me, is it the best solution for the whole? Same thing with these companies, and even my investors on my side in this, it's like, is it, do we just push through and just say, let's launch the product, let's sell your product, let's keep going with the plan. It might work, it might not work, blah, blah, blah. Or do I tell them the truth and say, and here's how we weather the storm? It's a whole lot of people putting their fingers in the boat, trying to keep the water from, and a lot of bailing, but we'll come through this on the other side, to my investors and to all these companies. And, and you guys, we just all have to do this together. We, as a team, we will do everything we can do to keep each person from drowning and coming through to the other side, so we can hit land and start our new lives, and, and visualize and complete our dreams. Or or not. It's a lot of pressure to put on a person. Because again, I hate to be that person. I hate to tell someone something and then have them just, throw up their hands and saying, okay, based on what you're telling me and what we're seeing, it's not even worth continuing. And we're just going to do our best. And if the company folds, the company folds. I'm not that way. If it was something personal, I almost feel like it's a moral obligation for me to come through the other side and go, neener, neener, neener. See, I did it. But I also realize I got to keep the company going. And sometimes I make decisions that are better for the company and less for my ego. So that's today. Today is making these final 2 decisions. Good news is that we have lots of companies. These companies want to jump on board with us going into 2025, and we just have to come up with the ending solution for 2024. Same thing with the house. The bad news is it worth the energy and cost? And is everybody willing to do what they have to do to get through the other side? Because I can only put in so much effort and so much intestinal fortitude for them, whether it's my daughter or these companies and our company. And then everybody else has to come in and pitch in to get the rest done. Right? That's kind of where we're at. So, all right, that's it for today. I want to do one last thing. So every day, I was supposed to do this yesterday. Stellar Crown came out. It's the new one. We're still trying to find a time. Again, I'm dealing with this really heavy stuff, so we want to get the card game stuff going, which is important. I got Billy a trainer box, and I got him some of the Stellar cards. Before we were dealing with Shrouded Fable, but the reason I went back and did this, and I'm going to do a tear a day, and the reason why is in this deck, in this series, there is the new Lapras GX card, and those of you guys who follow Trainer Club knows that that is his favorite Pokemon. It's his logo. It's everything. And I thought it's super duper important that before we move on to anything else, that we find him a GX Lapras. And I haven't opened the box yet. I'll open that. I might open it tomorrow, or I might open it tonight. I don't know. Actually, maybe I'll just do it right now. Because inside there is the book. So I am opening it. So I'll be a couple minutes over before I jump on my next meeting. And that book will tell you what all the cards are that are in there. So I know the Lapras is a GX card. Oh, there's the book. Okay. So I was able to get, that's the player's guide. Yep, the player's guide is what I need. So I won't actually open this box completely. I'll do that another time. I just need this, and then I'll open this one pack. So, as you guys know, you get the thing, and you get a list of all the cards that are in there. And so I'm going to quickly glance here at the back. Oh, wow. They got a new Bouffalant card. That's pretty. Oh, there it is. All right. So that's what we're looking for right there, which is the Lapras. Looks like he has a crown and everything else. Oh, good to know, Wifey. Well, and I want to get it, and I would like to get several of them, and then send them into PSA. And I would love to be able to find a PSA 10 of the Lapras for Billy. Billy's a good guy. He puts in a lot of effort. He does things. So I'm going to do the tear right now. All right. So let me see if I can do this. Okay, so we have a Panseer, Carnivine, Pommy, Fan Rotom, Gravity Gemstone, good card. So that's a good playable card. Piappa Berry. Oh, Corridon. I'm getting glare, sorry. Cradley. That looks like a reverse hollow. Kofu. That's a good trainer card. And Terrapogus. So that's my EX card, it looks like. Power card, and that's it. So this one we did not get one. I am going to, like I said, this will how I'll end the show each day is opening one pack and seeing if we can get that Lapras, and then if I can get 5 Laprases, then I'll send them into PSA. It's actually better to send into PSA in a batch. Plus, I think I'd like to try to figure out what what PSA looks at. Like, you should be able to look at the card and say, look, I mean, I'm not very good at it, but I've watched enough YouTube things now. It's like you're looking for uneven cuts, things like that. And then maybe what I'll do is if I send in 5, I will try to guess what I think the PSA will come back at, and we'll see how good I get at this. Anyway, thanks. Yeah, so maybe Cradley is a one of the common X cards. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I haven't figured out how all this works. I'm still a complete noob, but I'm enjoying it. And it would be cool. It would be cool to, like I said, to pull those for Billy. All right, I'm out of here. We will touch base again tomorrow, 7 a.m. Looking forward to seeing y'all, and peace.